So I've been asked to make a video on diet, and while it's not really my favorite topic for reasons that I'm going to go into, I'm going to make a brief video on nutrition for natural athletes. I'll keep it pretty basic, not go into too much detail on any one thing, and if there's something that you guys are interested in, please let me know in the comments and I'll go into more detail on it. Okay, so basically, for natural athletes, you can't get into any super specific dietary strategies because, you're just a basic human. You don't have any special hormones to make one particular strategy, like using a whole bunch of carbs or whatever, work the way some enhanced strategies work. You don't have insulin or anything like that. You're basically just trying to eat a healthy human diet and eat it in the quantities that are going to have you lose fat or gain muscle. Okay, so what is a healthy human diet? Well, basically paleo, but honestly, I don't think that you have to be particularly strict with it. Humans are very adaptable. They can use multiple energy sources. They can live off a lot of different things. If you just basically base your diet off of animal protein and fats, preferably raised in a healthy manner, vegetables and fruits, then you're going to be good to go. Do you have to completely avoid, carbs or, grain sources or anything like that? Not necessarily, no. I don't think there's there's relatively little benefit to being super strict with it. If you're going to eat some bread now and again, eat some bread. If you're going to eat oatmeal, you don't have to get too carried away with being ultra strict. I really don't think there's any benefit to that. But just, understand that humans are generally going to be healthiest when they base their diet around animal products, fruit and vegetables, and that's probably going to be good enough. You see a lot of support for that in historical texts. You see, if you look at the old-time strongmen's diets, it tended to center around the above food groups with an emphasis on meat. You have to take some of that with a grain of salt because some of their publicists would try to exaggerate what they ate to pretty much superhuman proportions just to make them into larger-than-life characters. I don't think Arthur Saxon ever actually drank like 100 beers in one night. But generally, you see that there was a strong preference for meat. In the much more reliable accounts of the 1950s, bodybuilders' diets, who I think had really nailed down diet and gotten it really down to a science as far as what a natural bodybuilder should be eating, you saw a somewhat paleo-esque, relatively balanced diet that was pretty heavy on protein foods, but overall relatively balanced. Not completely shying away from carbs, but not eating just boatloads of carbs the way some modern bodybuilders do. Just a balanced diet with an emphasis on protein. And I think that's going to be pretty optimal, for natural athletes. As long as you're pretty much avoiding trans fats, a lot of vegetable seed oils, like with high omega-6 ratios, not too terribly much sugar, although you don't have to avoid sugar altogether. You don't really have to avoid anything altogether. As long as you're not an alcoholic, you can drink, just don't be an alcoholic with it. You'll probably be okay, and the main factor becomes making sure that your calories are what they need to be for your goals. If you're trying to lose weight, obviously you're going to want to cut calories. I like intermittent fasting for that purpose. I think it's probably the easiest way, but if something else works for you, go for it. And if you're growing, you may not necessarily, but in a lot of cases, you probably will have to eat a calorie surplus. So that becomes kind of the issue with bodybuilding. But you don't get any special brownie points for eating a particularly strict or specific diet. None of that's going to matter. You've probably heard a lot that bodybuilding is like 80% nutrition. Well, not for natural athletes. I can see where that would come from with drug-using bodybuilders because, if you think about it, I'm a relatively normal-sized human being. I'm 6 feet tall, 210, 215 pounds. That's very normal for a 6 foot tall human being. Okay, so I eat a relatively normal human diet, just maybe a little healthier than average, maybe a little more protein than average. that will be adequate to make me 6 feet tall, 215 pounds. Now, if you're trying to be someone that is 5'8" and 280 pounds, you are not normally human proportioned. You're trying to become a completely different type of, creature, honestly. So you are going to need a lot more raw materials than what the normal human diet includes. So no matter how much gear you're on, if you're trying to be 5'8", 280 pounds, like, diet is going to be absolutely crucial to get you there, because there's just no physical way that you're going to get that big from what you're supposed to be without eating a whole lot. And it becomes even of life-saving importance if you start using the insulin strategy. If you don't eat carbs at the right time while using insulin, you will literally die. So that's why modern bodybuilders, it's been, steroids were introduced in the 60s. So ever since then, most of the top competitors, or let's just say all of the top competitors, have been on the stuff. So, it basically, like, very few people remember a time when, steroids weren't used in bodybuilding. So of course that's the conventional wisdom, but it really doesn't apply nearly as much to natural athletes. For natural athletes, yeah, you have to eat the right number of calories, but really, you look more like your training than like your diet. Your training is number one. I'd almost like to reverse it. It's 80% training, 20% nutrition. Maybe not quite, because if you just eat terribly, things aren't going to work well. But it's way more training than nutrition for natural athletes. Which is why I haven't done a video on this before. But honestly, it's probably good that I do it, just to get that misconception out of the way, get people to stop focusing on hyper-specific nutrition routines and just get your training in order. On that note, supplements don't do anything. I take whey protein, well, just because it's cheaper source of protein than any meat or dairy source. If you buy the 5-pound tub, it's actually cheaper than any meat you can buy at the store. So I treat it as a food. That's it. I don't think there's any special benefit to it, just it's actually cheaper, so that's why I do it. It makes sense for my budget. Really no other supplement does anything whatsoever. You're really not gonna get the benefits that you want from something you eat. It's gonna be from something that you do. That's about all I've got on this particular video. I can go into more detail about the particular cutting strategies or bulking strategies that I use, or what I think should and shouldn't be in the paleo diet. Things to that effect if anyone's interested, but like I say, not my favorite topic. All right, well, thanks for watching.